Morning light found its way through the curtains, soft and golden, washing the living room in a calm glow. Dust motes floated lazily in the beams of sun. Somewhere outside, a dove cooed. Inside the house that had once been silent now carried the faint sounds of light footsteps. A kettle beginning to hum, and the low crackle of a radio that hadn't played in months. Clara stood at the window, holding her cup of tea close. The framed letter on the mantel caught the light, its words faintly visible through the glass. She smiled at it, whispering, "We read you, Robert." "We're listening." Atinio came in, still sleepy-eyed, but lighter somehow. "Morning," he said, setting a basket of fresh rolls on the table. "Morning," she replied. "You went out already?" He nodded. "Bakery down the road. I figured we'd need breakfast for a few extra mouths." "Extra mouths," she repeated, curious. "I called Aunt Marian," Daniel said, rubbing the back of his neck. "And Uncle Ben thought maybe they'd come by. You said you wanted the house full again." Clara blinked, caught between surprise and emotion. Then she laughed softly. "You actually listened." "I'm trying," he said with a grin. The kettle whistled, breaking the moment. Clara poured water over the tea leaves while Daniel opened the windows. Cool air drifted in, carrying the scent of wet grass and blooming roses by late morning. The first car rolled into the driveway. Voices filled the porch warm, familiar, overlapping. Aunt Marian's laugh, Uncle Ben's baritone greeting. The sound made the hallway seem wider, the walls brighter. Clara met them at the door, a smile stretching across her face. Hugs came first, then exclamations about how long it had been. Someone commented on the smell of roses. Someone else noticed the framed letter on the mantel. When they sat down, Clara told them about finding it. Her voice trembled once, but only once. She read a few lines aloud, her tone gentle, sure. The room fell quiet as the last sentence sync of mornings hung in the air. Uncle Ben wiped at his eyes. "That sounds just like him," he murmured. Aunt Marian nodded. Always knew how to make sense of things. Daniel brought out the bread and fruit, and the house began to fill with chatter and laughter again. Plates clinked, chairs scraped. Someone turned up the music a little. It wasn't loud. It was alive. After lunch, they all went outside. The garden glistened in the sun. Tiny red buds had begun to open on the first rosebush. Clara knelt down beside it, brushing a petal gently with her fingertips. "He'd be happy about this," she said. Marian crouched next to her. "You did good, Clara. You both did." Daniel looked around at the bright sky, the swaying flowers, the people standing together, and realized that the grief he'd carried for so long had softened. It hadn't disappeared. It had simply found a place to rest. Later, when the guests had gone and the dishes were stacked to dry, Clara and Daniel sat on the porch with mugs of tea. The evening air was cool, the sky painted in shades of peach and violet. "It feels different now," Daniel said. "Like the house is breathing again." Clara nodded. "It is because we stopped holding our breath." He smiled. "I think Dad would have liked today." She looked toward the roses, their petals catching the last bit of sunlight. "I think he was here," she said. A gentle wind stirred, rustling the bushes in agreement. They sat quietly for a while. The world outside softened into twilight. From inside came the faint ticking of the clock, the same sound that had once filled lonely mornings. Now steady and comforting, Clara spoke first. "You know, I was afraid I'd never move forward. But I think I finally understand what he meant in that letter." Daniel turned to her. "What part?" "The part about mornings," she said. "It's not about a time of day. It's about choosing light again, no matter how many nights come before." He nodded slowly. "Then, let's keep choosing it." A smile touched her lips. "Deal." They clinked their mugs softly like a promise. When night settled, Clara rose and went inside. She placed a small candle beside the framed letter and lit it. The flame flickered gently, reflecting on the glass. Daniel watched from the doorway. "What's that for?" "A thank you," she said simply. He smiled. "He'd like that too." The candle burned low, its glow spilling across the mantel where 3 memories now live side by side, a broken frame, a letter, and a new photograph of 2 people who had found strength again as the last light dimmed. The house stayed warm alive with echoes of laughter, the scent of roses, and the quiet hum of peace in the distance. A train horn sounded, fading into the night. Daniel closed the window and turned off the lamp. The day was over. But the story wasn't. It had just changed shape from loss to memory, from memory to life again. And when the clock ticked once more in the silence, it didn't sound like loneliness anymore. It sounded like home. The morning was quiet, soft, and calm, the kind that made the house feel almost alive. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, a gentle rhythm that filled the silence. The sound of birds outside the window mixed with the faint hum of the refrigerator and the slow drip of coffee into a pot in that stillness. Daniel stirred from sleep. The sunlight, thin and golden, slipped through the curtains and brushed across his face. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, taking a deep breath. The house still smelled faintly of cinnamon and soap smells that always reminded him of her, downstairs. Clara was already awake. She moved quietly through the kitchen, her slippers whispering against the tile. She poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, staring at the steam. Her eyes looked tired but kind. Her hair tied loosely behind her neck. She had been in this house for 3 years now since marrying Daniel's father. But things had changed. The laughter that once filled these rooms had faded when his father passed away 6 months ago. Now, it was just the two of them. Sometimes Daniel didn't know what to say to her. Sometimes silence was all they had. He came downstairs slowly, the floorboards creaking under his steps. She turned when she heard him. "Morning," she said softly, her voice warm but distant. "Morning," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. He hesitated, then smiled a little. "You're up early again?" Clara gave a small shrug. "Couldn't sleep. The rain was loud last night." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I heard it too." She looked at him for a moment longer than usual, then turned back to her cup. The sound of her stirring the coffee filled the space between them. He poured himself some too, careful not to bump her arm. They stood side by side, not touching, but close enough to feel each other's warmth. The ticking clock seemed louder now. For a while, neither spoke. Only the small sounds of the house, the birds outside. The soft clink of cups, the gentle hum of the morning. Then Clara said quietly, "Your father used to hum in the mornings. I still wait to hear it sometimes." Daniel glanced at her, his throat tight. "Yeah, he always did that. Drove me crazy as a kid." She smiled faintly, a sad kind of smile. "I miss that." He nodded. "Me too." The silence that followed was heavy, but not painful. It was shared like two people standing in the same rain. Not needing to speak to understand, Clara turned and reached for the sugar jar, but her hand trembled slightly. Without thinking, Daniel steadied it. Their fingers brushed, a small pause. Her breath caught, and she looked up. For a moment, neither of them moved. The warmth of his hand lingered against hers longer than it should have. She pulled away gently, whispering, "Thank you." He nodded, eyes lowering. Of course. The sound of the spoon against the cup seemed sharper now. Echoing softly in the room, they sat at the table after that, Clara with her book, Daniel scrolling through his phone. The air was quiet, but charged with something invisible. Every time she turned a page, he looked up. Every time he sighed, she noticed. When she reached across the table to adjust the vase, her sleeve brushed his arm. He didn't move. Neither did she. "Do you still have that photo of him?" Daniel asked suddenly, trying to shift the air. Clara looked at him, a bit startled. "Yes, it's upstairs. I couldn't take it down." "You shouldn't," he said quietly. "He'd want it there." She nodded slowly, her eyes softening. "You sound more like him every day." Daniel laughed under his breath. "Guess I picked up a few things." Clara looked down at her cup again. "He was proud of you, you know." He swallowed the warmth in his chest, mixing with something deeper, something confusing. "He never said it much." "He didn't have to," she replied. Her eyes met his again, and for a heartbeat, something unspoken passed between them. A quiet moment stretched. The world seemed to fade around them, the ticking clock, the distant bird sounds, even the hum of the fridge. It was just the two of them, sitting across from each other in a kitchen too big for silence. Then Clara blinked. as if realizing the space between them had changed. She stood up quickly, clearing her cup. "I should get started on the laundry," she murmured. "Do you want me to help?" Daniel asked. She paused at the sink, her back to him. "No, it's fine. You rest. You've got work later." He hesitated, then said softly, "Clara, you don't have to do everything alone." Her shoulders tensed. She turned slightly, her face half in shadow. "I'm used to it." Daniel stood slowly, his voice gentle. "You don't have to be." For a second, she just looked at him, this young man standing there, unsure but sincere. Her lips parted as if to answer, but no words came. Instead, she gave a small nod and turned away. The washing machine door clicked open. The sound of water rushing in filled the silence. Daniel lingered by the doorway, watching her move. There was grace in the way she folded things, in the way her hair fell forward, in the way she hummed softly to herself without realizing. He didn't know when it started. The feeling that maybe what he felt wasn't just care. Maybe it was something else, something he shouldn't name. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The light fell across the kitchen floor, touching both their feet. Neither of them looked at it, but both felt its warmth. The morning continued quiet, calm, and yet somehow full of something new. A beginning neither of them spoke about. Only the soft hum of the washing machine and the faint ticking of the clock kept their secret.